If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MINDSHOCK. This is your host, Bruce McGuire. Just a quick conspiratorial topic today on follow the money. Now, follow the money has been an interesting idiom for quite some time in the conspiracy field, or even in just basic detective work. When someone's trying to find criminals and solve cases involving any kind of corruption, conspiracy, illegal trafficking of any kind, follow the money has proven very useful over time. Quite a wise saying. And of course, it's definitely a staple of conspiracy theorists, aka critical thinkers. Now, there's a lot of coincidence theorists and just illogical goofballs across the board, like Joe Rogan, and a lot of these guys that have come out and used follow the money incorrectly due to a basic misunderstanding, a fundamental lack of understanding of how follow the money works. So I thought I'd address it in a relatively short podcast. As always, if you like the MindShock podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Now, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications if you like the podcast. Hit the like button. Feel free to share it across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Reddit, Patreon, Facebook. Just check the links in the description. Questions, comments, thoughts, theories, debunkings, rebuttals, insults of any kind, leave them in the comment section. All right, so let's get into it quick. So, in a lot of discussions regarding certain conspiracies, for example, the flat earth is quite an amusing topic to develop logic, regardless of which conclusion one jumps to. Of course, on MindShock, we do logical analyses on these debates and discussions focused only on the methodology. Is the methodology scientific or scientismic? Of course, big difference between science, pseudoscience, and scientism. So, scientism, of course, just propagating the dogma of the establishment and those that view, obviously this isn't everybody, there are some people that are objective and neutral, there are some people one side versus the other side, but to the people that are scientismic, they view the government, the CDC, any kind of these institutions, they view them as churches, like the Church of NASA, Church of CDC, and the people propagating certain dogma, they view them as priests, and their words as gospel truth that can never be fallible. These are infallible humans whose information has to be correct. They can't be wrong. They can't have misunderstood or using outdated or incorrect theories. And nobody can question the dogma because that's blasphemy. So you can't examine those bottom layers of whether you call it a pyramid or a house of cards. Any kind of examination of the bottom layers is viewed as blasphemy. So that's what scientism is. It views criticism as conspiracy instead of real objective science, which is, of course, neutral, logical, and is open, always open forum. There's no censoring. There's no ridiculing on the basis of somebody having a dissenting view or questioning those base layers of dogma. So let's go to the follow the money conspiracy. So again, like Joe Rogan uses some of these flat earth YouTubers, they're just making money, as if it's illegitimate. So that, of course, is the silliest and most illogical way to use follow the money, completely fallacious and inaccurate. For example, if Neil deGrasse Tyson gets paid to show up on Discovery Channel, that means everything he's saying is false? I mean, he got paid, right? He's making money, so that means it's false. So Joe Rogan's silliness, of course, knows no bounds. If you've checked out the Joe Rogan podcast Logical Analyses, of which I've done several, his go-to fallacies, of course, appeal to authority and appeal to popularity. So he views scientism as the ultimate truth, and none of these priests can ever be questioned, and that's just his go-to. He almost seems to do that when triggered, so in other topics, he fully admits he's a complete moron and he doesn't know anything. So he is very interesting. His podcast is worth it just for the unintentional comedy alone. It's very, very amusing to see him just prove his lack of basic understanding and to view psychology, because the projection, the triggering, it's all textbook on the Joe Rogan podcast. So plenty to be learned from that podcast, especially in the way of logical analyses. So he uses follow the money, a YouTuber is making money. Okay, so the real follow the money, because people make money even doing basic arithmetic videos for kids on YouTube. Does that mean the arithmetic is inaccurate because they're making money off a YouTube channel? So that it's just the fallaciousness is off the charts when used that incorrectly. So what is the real basis of follow the money? So in corruption, obviously it's people getting paid off. So in kind of in pop culture, this saying follow the money is traced to the 1976 film All the President's Men, which basically suggests that political corruption can be brought to light by examining money transfers between parties. So between two parties. So for example, if YouTube was in on it and YouTube was offering much, much higher ad revenue for flat earthers, and then all of a sudden you have a more apt usage of follow the money. Obviously, that's not what happens. Obviously, Joe Rogan and all these other guys that are too goofy and silly to even understand just the basics of any kind of logic or conspiracy. Some people believe the actual follow the money phrase was first used publicly by Henry E. Peterson at the 1974 Senate Judiciary Committee hearings as Earl J. Silbert was nominated to U.S. Attorney. In the 1975 book, Clive Burrell and Brian Cascinella, Crime in Britain Today, also used the phrase. And then since then, it has been used in investigative journalism and political debate. Follow the Money was actually a series of CBS reports as well. Okay, so when you have this, follow the money is also related to paper trails. Obviously, another popular phrase, paper trail. Who paid off who for what purpose? So in the conspiracy world, which is the purpose of this podcast, follow the money would be very perfectly used, again, whether true or untrue, just in allegations, if you examine, for example, the CDC making vaccine manufacturers immune to prosecution in the 1986 Vaccine Act. That would suggest that certain vaccine manufacturers would no longer be concerned about being sued, so they don't really have to make safe vaccines. So when you follow the money in that case, and if they're making trillions of dollars, if doctors are getting kickbacks for the vaccines, you follow the taxpayer money, the allocations, the relief funds and charities in other countries for vaccination, all of a sudden, you have a follow the money paper trail. Now, again, this doesn't mean one side is wrong or right. It doesn't mean vaccines work or don't work or are safe or not safe. It's just that's a proper usage of follow the money if you want to know what's going on and in preventing objective, logical, neutral, scientific research. And we can look at, of course, the man-made climate change agenda and the tax lobbyists. That this is $1 billion to $1 trillion industry. So the funding that goes into man-made climate change, this has been exposed, of course, by many researchers. Again, for the cognitive dissonant coincidence theorists, the illogical masses, and the sheep. I am not alleging that man-made climate change is not true. I'm not alleging the percentage that humans affect or don't affect climate change in any way. That would be a topic for another podcast. But it is undeniable that the follow the money corruption agenda has been exposed by paper trail. So if you're a scientist working at a university, that doesn't mean you're in on it. Again, this is something that Joe Rogan and a lot of these other goofballs, they just don't have the basic sense to understand. That doesn't mean they're all in on it. They could really believe what they publish. All it means is that their studies are being financed by the institutions and the government that is peddling this agenda. Doesn't mean it's untrue, but it does call into question the objectivity and validity of studies that are bought and paid for. I will be addressing, also this has been requested in a dedicated podcast, actually addressing peer review, scientific studies, all those things, because people have had questions about that. Obviously, science is not based on consensus or peer review of any kind, because if all the peers are working with the same invalid theories, but they don't know they're invalid, again, let's go to Hanlon's razor here. Don't mistake for malice what can easily be explained by stupidity. And let's not ignore the prevalent and persistent Dunning-Kruger effect. I mean, the entire world is a perfect example. Everybody's subject to a certain amount of Dunning-Kruger. To pretend that certain priests of the CDC or the FDA or of NASA or of certain universities, to pretend to view these people as priests and pretend they're infallible, I mean, that's just silliness. That's just religious, faith-based ideology, the opposite of science. So just in general, the follow the money phrase, if you're dealing with the academic, medical, government, science industrial complex, this is $1 trillion money-making machine. Okay, so if you're following the money, you can view advocates of this machine. Are they really neutral and objective, or are they just doing it for a paycheck? Again, not because they know that it's false. They might think it's true, but regardless, that is their paycheck. Upton Sinclair once said it's very difficult to get a man to understand something which his paycheck depends upon him not understanding. So with all these cognitive biases and all these things that Joe Rogan accurately projects onto conspiracy theorists, from the coincidence theorist side, his subconscious has accurately projected these on others because he's a textbook example of all these cognitive biases and someone who just uses logical fallacies nonstop. This is why his usage and other certain people that are trying to downplay conspiratorial, aka critical thinking, by saying, oh, follow the money, those people aren't legitimate. They don't realize how silly they are, because the priests that they believe, whose peddle dogma they take as gospel truth on blind faith, are making far more money than the conspiracy theorists they are chastising. I mean, it's quite amusing and ironic if you really think about it. And it doesn't even really make any sense, particularly for flat Earth. Flat Earth is not really lucrative if you want. I mean, otherwise Alex Jones would be peddling flat Earth. Alex Jones makes a decent amount of money. Why isn't he peddling flat Earth if it's such a money maker? So again, the social stigma is so, because people are just so dogmatic and scientismic, illogical, they cannot even, the ignorance is off the charts. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance. Now, again, I'm not a flat earther. Obviously, the trolls and the cognitive dissonant sheep, they always try to pretend and strawman that I am advocating flat earth. Obviously, I'm not. The burden of proof is always on the one making the claim. And I know I've been a little tough on Joe Rogan. I'll be doing a few logical analyses where he happens to employ logic and reason. Obviously, nothing recent. But anyway, this was just a quick little podcast on the usage of follow the money and why there's a fundamental lack of understanding by the coincidence theorists of even the conspiracies being alleged, and just a complete lack of understanding on how the machine works. Money makes the world go round. These are all wise sayings. One could spend some time looking into that. So if trillions of dollars are being pushed by these academic, medical, government institutions and establishments, anything disrupting that, like let's say, for example, as Mark Sargent, a prominent flat earther, said, I mean, you don't have to believe flat earth to understand the conspiracy being alleged. And if you don't understand the conspiracy being alleged, instead of proving how silly and illogical you are to the world, why don't you just not discuss it? I mean, that's a viable option if you don't want to look dumb, right? And yet none of these people take it, which is why some people believe flat earth is a psyop because of how intentionally poorly defended it is from the heliocentric globe side. Either way, as Mark Sargent said, if they really did think the earth was a globe, the heliocentric globe model was true once NASA was established and they got the satellite imagery, all these things, if they did find out that it was flat, would they disclose it? And that goes for anything. I mean, you look at tobacco science, follow the money. Tobacco, the billion-dollar tobacco industry, if they're funding these studies that are showing that tobacco is safe, doesn't cause cancer, et cetera, they have not necessarily doctors, but medical organizations and committees in their pocket. Most doctors, unfortunately, they are cognitive dissonant, dogmatic coincidence theorists. They do not employ logic and reason. It has been indoctrinated out of them by their advanced degrees. So they're not going to question information coming from above. They're just following orders. They're not actually being scientific using logic and reason to deduce and discern truth. They're just following it. It's a lot easier to just turn your brain off and do what you're told. So when the tobacco industry had all these, I mean, you can see it's the same playbook for the sugar industry, same playbook for the vaccine industry. I mean, these are all the same playbooks. You don't have to be a genius to understand. This is very basic. Yeah, I would put it at around a fifth grade level, but I don't want to insult younger children because I think there's a lot of younger children out there that could understand these things as well. So I don't want to insult them. I don't know. I mean, is it a 4-year-old level, a 7-year-old level? I don't really know. Obviously, there's a wide range of IQs even in those age ranges, so it's really impossible to say. But in general, these are not advanced. This is not rocket science or brain surgery. Okay? This is just the basics of logic and reason. The basics. Critical thinking, deductive reasoning. And yet, so many people have a fundamental lack of understanding on just how these institutions pat each other on the back. The cult of state worship, which obviously most people are indoctrinated into, it's dependent on academia supporting the corruption in all these other industries. Every field is politicized. Obviously, the medical field, obviously, the physics field, all these fields are politicized. And the amount of money it would take to we could take the subject of course, general relativity, Einstein's relativity, of course, the unproven theory that most of physics is built on as a house of cards. Now, of course, Tesla proved with hundreds of his own patents and inventions that worked perfectly, as opposed, which his theory, electromagnetism, opposed to the theory of relativity. And of course, in modern times, Run Z Cow has debunked relativity, completely debunked it in easy to understand terms. So again, I urge anybody who doesn't know about that you could check out Run Z Cow's debunking of relativity. Relativity is wrong. He has it on YouTube. Pretty easy to understand. You don't have to have any kind of degree. I would even say you don't need to have a high school diploma. I would say anywhere from elementary to middle school understanding the single-digit grade levels is enough to understand what he's explaining. He explains it pretty simply. So all of this physics is just built on relativity being true. If it's not true, what do the cognitive dissonant coincidence theorists, the lemmings, the masses, what do they expect? The institutions to just come out and say it's wrong? When has that ever happened in history? And that's the other thing about not just follow the money, but a lot of these coincidence theorists, they don't study history or human psychology, which is, of course, very important in understanding how all of this works. People don't want to look wrong, especially people in perceived positions of authority. Like, would the Catholic Church just come out and say, oops, the Bible's bunk, God doesn't exist, oopsies? Would they ever do that? Of course not. Why would anybody expect them to do that? So institutions even more corrupt than the Catholic Church. I know that's hard to believe for some, or equally corrupt, however, or slightly less corrupt, however you want to phrase it, doesn't matter. Why would they ever come out and admit any kind of fault? It's just the coincidence theorist mind is so bereft of logic and reason. It's really, really bizarre. But I hope this podcast sheds some light on the follow the money saying and how to use it properly versus improperly. It's the changing of hands between multiple complicit parties. It's not simply people doing something for money, because that means any book ever published would be illegitimate, including every single science textbook that people like Joe Rogan view as the Bible. That can't be wrong. The Big Bang Theory, evolution, whatever. All those books, they were all made for money. They were all made for money. Neil deGrasse Tyson, Lawrence Krauss, all these guys, they're not homeless bums on the street without a penny to their name. They're paid handsomely for all of these things. Does that mean they're lying? No. They could be mistaken, or they could be lying. It doesn't mean either way. That's why we have the scientific method. That's why we have logic. So if you study it, you can examine people's arguments based on the merit of the argument and not fall for all these countless fallacies like Joe Rogan and these other coincidence theorist goofballs do. Ad hominem logical fallacies, genetic logical fallacies, just dismissing it because of a particular source or because someone's making money. Everybody's making money off of something. Doesn't mean it's illegitimate. Again, as the whole purpose of the MindShock podcast with these logical analyses is to promote logic and reason and a legitimate scientific line of inquiry. It's not about jumping to conclusions or assumptions or circular reasoning fallacies. I'm not even saying any of these people are wrong about their conclusions. They might be right. They might be accidentally right without understanding logic and reason. Of course, that's a possibility. But that's pretty much the gist of the follow the money phrase and how to use it correctly versus incorrectly. Hope you guys enjoyed another edition of the MindShock podcast. If you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Hit that like button if you liked it. Share it across social media platforms. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure your device allows notifications to come through. So when you hit that bell to get the notifications, you'll actually get them. I know a lot of people don't get them. And you could also check us out on Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for a topic, true crime case, or podcaster requests. If you want a particular co-host for this podcast, everybody has their favorites. Any questions, comments, theories, thoughts, debunkings, rebuttals, or insults, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.